Hello YouTube, my name's Alex and today I'm going to discuss adjusting to life after prison. So I was thinking about this the other day. I was watching Shawshank Redemption, and those of you who may have seen it may recall there's an elderly gentleman, and just before he was getting out of prison he put a shank to someone's neck for no reason, with the intention of killing this person so he didn't have to leave prison. He'd been in prison for about 50 or 60 years, and the thought of leaving really scared him because the world had changed so much. Eventually he did leave, and unfortunately the character in the story committed suicide because he just couldn't handle life out of prison. Now I only did a little over the longest amount I did, although I did come out for a little month, but I went back in. But the longest single stretch I did was only a year and a half. So God knows how these other people who do 5, 10, 20 years are affected, because it did affect me a lot. So I'm going to talk a bit about how I was affected. So I remember towards the end of my sentence, I'm very excited about getting out of prison, and the day it finally comes. I live a 4-hour walk away from home, and I was offered a lift home, of course, and someone to pick me up, but I wanted to walk, and I was like, "What? You want to walk? It's 4 hours." But I'm thinking, yo, I've been locked up for a year and a half, over a year and a half. The only views I've had is the sky on walls and other inmates. To have a walk of freedom for 4 hours, 10, 20 hours, I would have done it. So I walked home. Now, most prisons are situated in the middle of nowhere. So this was in the country. So I got to do a walk through the countryside all the way back to the city I live in. And it was a long, long walk, and I didn't regret it at all. I remember walking and looking at animals, like I was going past cows and sheep, and I didn't think I missed animals. I suppose I didn't miss animals. I'm not an animal lover at all. But I remember just stopping at all these fields and fences and just looking at animals, because I hadn't seen a living creature other than a human for a long time. So just to look at the animals grazing and moving and how they were with each other, I found it so fascinating. And I kept stopping and looking at all these animals. So that walk of freedom was great. The cars driving past me, flying past me, that's probably been going at 50 miles an hour. But to me, I'd not seen anything move that fast for a long time. I remember the first time I eventually got in a car and I felt like I was on a roller coaster. Like, it was so strange having not been in a car for so long. So that I remember that walk. I'll never forget that walk. I'm glad I walked. I had a big bag in my back, and it was like the walk of freedom, the walk of walking towards a new life, a life which I'd thought and imagined and dreamed of for over a year and a half, and I was making that walk back to my new life. That was really good. That was. So adjusting to life. One of the things I remember, so when I got out of prison, I was probably a little over 22 years old, and I'm 37 now, if you're interested, or 36 actually. Yeah, 36. So when I got out of prison, I was still pretty young. So my friends were going out clubbing. So of course, first weekend, mans want to go out clubbing, right? So I went out clubbing, and I remember I had to leave early and go home because I was so paranoid. Because in prison, no one really sneaks up on someone, or no one comes behind you. You're always aware of what's happening at any time, because you don't know what could happen if you're not always on guard. So when I was in the club and people kept not bashing into me, but like you scrape past people because it's busy. So people kept touching me, touching my back. I was a little jerking everywhere. Like, what the fuck? I was so on guard, just people casually walking by. But it wasn't something I was used to. You don't really walk and sneak up on someone in prison. You already know where you are, where everyone else is, what's happening. And just to have that all this constantly time, people just popping out of nowhere, it was horrible, and I really, really didn't like it. So I ended up going home early because I just couldn't handle all those people not being in my eyesight, me not in a dark place as well. It was like a nightmare. Dark place, flashing lights, and horrible. So that was one of the issues which took me a long time to get used to. The biggest thing which I struggled with, which is the main purpose of this video, is authority. Okay, so how it works in prison is the person with the most authority is normally the person who's But unfortunately, it's a horrible attitude to have. And I hate that I had it. But if you ever go to prison, or if you've been to prison, you'll know this is the case. The person who with the most authority is normally the biggest, toughest, or the person who's willing to go the furthest violently, who earns the respect of others. Not respect as in admiration, but the respect of in authority. Okay, they're in charge. You've got to do what they do. Do what they say. Not do what they say, but you know what I'm saying? They're more like a boss. So in prison, I was a good little fighter. I mean, I was a good fighter before I went in prison, but I was never one for going far. So I've never used a weapon on anyone, and I'll never go to some of the extreme measures that some people would go into prison. Hence why that last video when I talked about Webster, he was one guy I wouldn't mess with, because it weren't so much as whether I could beat him physically, it's whether I would be prepared to handle the repercussions of how far he would possibly go should I scrap with him, which is why I admitted in the last video I was scared and I didn't want to fuck around. And in my video called My Crazy Prison Stories, I think it was number 1, I talked about how a guy came into prison. You may remember, if you watch my videos, you may remember a guy came into prison. It was a bit like me, similar, maybe a bit older than me actually. Probably a good little strapper on the outside, and some bigger guy trying to mess with him in the prison. And this was a guy's first day. And this guy just went, boom, knocked him out, clean out straight away, because he's a good fighter. But then the guy went into the shower like the day or two later. And then, as you know, if you watched the previous video, people filled up the water kettles, boiled them, put sugar in them, turned it into boiling syrup, went into the shower while he's naked, threw kettles, like I think they all had a kettle each, threw it all over him, started stabbing him up, and that was the end of that guy. I know he survived, but he'll be scarred for life now. So even no matter how tough you are in prison or how tough you are on the outside, whether you've had 25 fights, yeah, unless you're willing to go really far for someone, really far in a fight, it's not really worth it. Why am I talking about that? Okay, yes, I'm talking about hierarchy. Yeah, okay, so you kind of respect the people who are a bit nutty, or the tough people, or the guys, probably gangs who are willing to do that kind of shit. Okay, so in prison, I wasn't a pussy, but I also wasn't one of the guys that would fucking go to them extreme. So I was kind of not low, but just average higher. So when I came out, so there's not many people. So the majority of other inmates, I probably normally have a bit more over them than they would me. And then you'd have the top boys who are like, fuck that, I ain't fucking with them. And the reason I say this is because when I left, I decided, as you may recall, that I wanted to start trying to do office work, kind of do jobs which I probably never gone for before prison. And one of the things I really struggled with was dealing with authority. So some of these bosses which I had, I was probably about 22, 23. They were probably about 30 to 40 to 50 years old. Probably a lot smaller than me physically. A lot slimmer than me, because at the time I was a much bigger hench geezer. And so let's say I was late or something, or I did something wrong. When they come up to me and they'll go to me, if I have to tell you again, and I'll shout in my face. And me being fresh out of prison, I look down at them and I'll think, what the fuck is going on? I couldn't get my head around how the fuck this guy thinks he can talk to me like that. Because in this world I've just left, if someone who looked and acted like him come up and spoke to me in that manner, what the fear would be over me. And I can remember really struggling with that. As I said, it's a very horrible attitude and bad attitude that I had back then. But when you go to prison, these are some of the attitudes which you start to develop. That's just the way it is. So I really struggled with being spoken down to by people who I could dominate physically. And that took me a really long time to be able to adjust with that and learn that on the outside, it's not about how nutty you are and how strong and tough you are. That's a load of shit, of course. It's about kind of your status and what you've done to get where you are, etc. So that, I really, really struggled with that. And there was an incident where I did get in trouble actually, where this boss, because the thing is, when I used to go to these workplaces, I didn't go, yo man, I'm straight out of prison. I would be the most innocent guy you'd ever know, like butter mud melt. Hello, nice to meet you. Yeah, my name's Alex. I'm a bit new to this, but I want to try. Like, all I wanted to do is just be a geek. I never wanted anyone to view me the way I used to want other people to view me, and definitely other people took advantage of me for that. And this one manager, I was working at this place, right? And the guy, he wasn't very good to me at all, which I accepted. And in my head, I'm thinking, yo, if you were from the world I've just been in, it'd be a different story. But I'm happy to play this game, yeah? So he used to talk to me like shit because I let him walk all over me because I didn't care. I just wanted to do a job and get better. And it got to a point where too much became too much. He hadn't paid me for like 3 weeks. I was meant to get paid weekly. He spoke to me like rubbish because I allowed him to. So obviously, if you allowed to be walked over, people will take advantage of you, you know. And it just got to a point where I lost my temper with him. And at the time, I was working 2 jobs. So I'd work one job from like 9 till 4. Then I'd leave that job and work another job till like 5 till 8. And I was tired, and he kept making me wait outside. Anyway, he's just being an idiot. And one time I just lost my temper with him. And I remember it felt so good because he's just looking at me shouting up, if I have to tell you one more time. And I was like, yo, boom. And I just pushed him on the floor. And the look in his face, he just looked at me like, what the fuck? And there was a hammer. And I picked this hammer up and goes, yo, where's my fucking money? You taking a fucking piss? And his face changed to like, what the fuck? I can remember saying to him, have I got anything I can use as a hammer? No. I can remember pointing a hammer at, stand over and point a hammer. I goes, you probably think I was a little pussy boy, didn't you? A little geek. Yes, sir. No, sir. I goes, guess what, man? I've just got out of fucking prison, yeah? You know how long I spent in there dealing with fucking dickheads? You think you can talk to me like shit? Where's my fucking money? Oh, my God. That felt really good at the time. Now I look back, man. I'm sorry that I scared that guy so much. But let me tell you, you've all had bad bosses. And they deserved it. Fortunately, someone else came in, told me to calm the hell down. And I just ended up walking out, and I walked home, and then by a long walk home, you know, like an hour's walk home. And as soon as I got to the front door, police pulled up. Are you Alex? And yeah, and then they arrested me. I got off with that one because that was one of the assault ones where I represented myself and I told them the whole story and all that. But I remember it feeling really good for him to stand up for myself and have that happen. So anyway, the reason I'm telling that is because that was one of the things, had it not been for prison, I would have known. It was just one of those things where you struggle to deal with. It was only because I've come out of prison, which I couldn't accept being spoken to that way. And I didn't really know how to deal with these office people and deal with them in a way that they would respect me, but without it being violent. So I went the opposite way, is thought, oh, let them walk all over me because that would be the best. But then that was really bad attitude. That was because it allowed them to just take the piss. Maybe it had something to do with that guy just being a really bad person as well. So that's a story of adjusting to prison life. Anything else I struggled to adjust to with? So authority. It took me a long time, many years to adjust to get into, be able to respect people. And I always really wanted to just make it work for me. I remember one job I used to walk in the office and I say, morning Alex, are you okay? And I say, yeah man, are you? And I remember once the manager said, will you stop saying yeah man? I said, I'm sorry. I said, you've not just stepped off a boat. You've not just come off a boat from Jamaica. We speak properly, please. I can remember being really hurt by that because I think she probably used to think that I said, yeah, man, because I wanted to be cool, when really that's just a vocabulary me and whoever I'm not around at the time had. So it took me a long time to really change and really adapt to being what people look for in an office worker. I remember I did a class on accents. So I tried to learn how to speak posh because I never wanted to, all I wanted to do is do well. And I didn't want people to judge me because I let them walk over me. I didn't want them to judge me because I maybe spoke with a little accent. All I wanted to do is have a good life. And as you know, it's hard enough already because I'd already had another job where I'd done everything properly and then they'd come and escort me off the premises like a criminal because I'd done a criminal record check. So every job I had felt so precious and I just really wanted to make it work. So I think I've gone a bit off track there. But to sum up, one of the things I mainly struggled with when getting out of prison and adjusting to society was being surrounded by strangers all around me in big crowds, dealing with authority and learning to respect people because of their position, not because of their physical size and appearance. And anything else? I'm sure there's other things, but that's all I can think of right now. Hope you're okay. Hope you're having a nice day. Peace.